I want to talk to you about a bunch of stuff, particularly the MMA book, Blood in the Cage, which I finished reading. I really enjoyed, and I had some questions for you uh, about what's sort of happened since then, because there have been two things interesting that have happened since the book came out. And the first one was Dana White, the president of USC, going on the big online rant against the female reporter Loretta Hunt. Basically that sort of profane tirade and calling her a dumb bitch, and using the F word for homosexuals and stuff like that. Do you feel since you wrote the book that like has your personal image of Dana White, has that changed? With what happened with that rant?
If you've dealt with the guy, that it doesn't surprise you. But you know what I think people don't realize? This wasn't some Michael Phelps, gotcha on my cell phone. He basically, he coordinated this. I mean, that's what's so stunning. It wasn't as though, this was, this was Lily Tomlin getting yelled at and somebody's secretly recording it. I mean, he orchestrated this, which sort of tells you, in some ways, how out of touch he is. And I think it was a good, we had a pretty good run on the internet, and everybody was asking me about it. But I think it was really, I don't want to say fatal, but I think that was really a misstep for UFC. I mean, this organization is going to grow no matter what, but it's really essential that it sort of convinces old media, television executives, ad buyers, athletic sponsors that this is not cavemen. And
Right.
I think I think the more time you spend in the sport, more you realize that, look, I mean, it's crazy violent, and there's a lot, people that dislike it certainly are entitled to their opinion, but it's pretty legitimate. But you see something like that from the CEO of the company. I mean, this is the UFC's David Stern fan. This is Roger Goodell, doing a video blog and calling a female reporter who happens to be totally credible. I mean, Loretta Hunt is not some some renegade. This is someone who's been with the sport from the beginning, total credibility. For him to go on and call her a dumb bitch and just go crazy with that, his opinion of anonymous sources, I mean, it was pretty out of control. And I think, so things like that really set back the organization. I mean, Dana White's done a lot of good. People love him, people hate him, but you can't deny how far UFC's come under his leadership. But it's things like that that really set the whole organization back.
Yeah, it's almost as if particularly after reading the book, it seems like that the organization at some point, or maybe has already, has outgrown the type of leadership that he provides. Like, you need someone who's a bulldog in the beginning that's going to force you to pay attention to the sport, but almost now, because it's so prominent, it almost needs more of a friendly ambassador rather than some just out of control dick who's bad mouthing people at every turn.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, the base is already sold. You sort of needed him in the beginning. That he consolidates these leagues and he plays tough with the competition. But yeah, this is at the point now. I mean, he talks about getting Gatorade sponsorship and getting bigger than the Super Bowl. One surefire way not to get Gatorade on board is to have a chief executive like that popping off. I don't disagree with that at all. That the guy was great during the sort of critical growth period, but now that this is, credible people are calling this a billion-dollar business. You just can't have your chief executive doing shit like that.
Sports still, surprisingly, it doesn't get the sort of mainstream sports media coverage that a sporting equivalent like boxing would get. Like, you don't see results you sometimes see results the next night, maybe on ESPN.com, but newspapers don't cover it, obviously. And I feel like even the web, the main sort of web sources for sports don't cover it all with the same sort of depth they cover boxing. I mean, do you think that's coming, or are they just out of touch? I mean, I don't understand why they haven't sort of jumped on board. I don't know what they're waiting for.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think there's still a lot of 55-year-old sports editors that can't take this thing seriously. And I think, honestly, I think eventually it's just going to become an economic decision. Sort of like the way NASCAR, people resisted and eventually got to the point where they said, look, I don't get it, a bunch of guys driving around a circle, but too many people care about this for me to ignore that. Right. And I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, I'm sure New York Times, name your mainstream media outlet, and I suspect there are decision makers rolling their eyes at two guys fighting in a cage, but I think eventually they're you look at the placement these fights get on Yahoo, for example.
Right.
It's not driven by philanthropy. I mean, clearly this is getting the hits that make it a bigger story than the NBA playoffs or whatever it's supplanting. And I think eventually, again, you don't have to like it. I totally get that two guys fighting in a cage is not for everyone, but I just think the numbers are going to be so big that media can't ignore it much longer.
Yeah,